The officer hasn't even reached your window yet, and your next sentence could quietly decide whether your night ends with a warning or something much worse. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever been in a situation where an officer asked to search your car and you felt like you had no real choice but to say yes? If you have, I want you to drop your experience in the comments, because what you're about to hear might completely change how you handle that moment next time. And trust me, there is one simple sentence that most people never use, but it can shift the entire direction of a traffic stop. Now here's where things get interesting. Most drivers think traffic stops are about paperwork. License, registration, maybe a quick explanation, and then you're on your way. That's what people believe is happening. But from the officer's perspective, something very different is going on. Before a single word is exchanged, a silent evaluation has already started. Your speed when pulling over, how quickly you stopped, where your hands are, whether you're reaching for something, even how long it takes you to roll down your window. All of this is being observed, processed, and quietly filed away. And here's the part most people miss. The conversation that follows isn't random. It's strategic. When an officer asks, "Do you mind if I take a quick look inside your vehicle?" It sounds casual, almost harmless, like a routine question. But legally, that question carries serious weight. Because in most situations, without your permission or a strong legal reason, they cannot just search your car freely. That's where consent comes in. And once you give it, even casually, you've just opened a door that is very difficult to close. This is exactly where that one sentence becomes powerful. I do not consent to any searches. That's it. Simple, calm, clear. But don't misunderstand what that sentence does. It doesn't magically end the traffic stop. It doesn't guarantee the officer walks away. And it definitely doesn't mean nothing else will happen. What it does is remove one of the easiest paths an officer has to legally search your vehicle. Now, here's where people make a critical mistake. They either say nothing at all, hoping silence alone will protect them, or they panic and say too much. Silence without clarity can sometimes create confusion. Over-explaining can create problems you didn't even have. But a calm, direct statement like that sets a boundary. And officers notice that immediately, not because it angers them, but because it changes the legal landscape of the interaction. Now let's step into a realistic scenario. You're driving home late. Maybe you rolled slightly over the speed limit, maybe not. Lights appear behind you. You pull over. Your heart rate goes up. That's normal. The officer approaches, asks for your documents, and then casually asks where you're coming from. Seems harmless, right? But here's the subtle reality. Every question has a purpose. It's not just about information. It's about consistency, tone, behavior, even hesitation. If your answers don't match your behavior, that creates suspicion. Now imagine the officer follows up with, "Do you have anything illegal in the car?" And then, "Mind if I take a quick look?" This is the exact moment most people lose control of the situation, because they think refusing will make them look guilty. So they say yes. And that's where things can go sideways fast. Because once a search begins, anything found, no matter how small, can be used. Even something you forgot was there. Even something that belongs to someone else. Even something completely unrelated to why you were stopped. Now here's the twist that most people never consider. Refusing a search does not equal guilt. In fact, from a legal perspective, it's simply you exercising a right. But the way you say it matters more than the words themselves. If you say it aggressively, with attitude, or in a confrontational tone, you escalate the situation. If you say it calmly, respectfully, and without emotion, it does the opposite. I do not consent to any searches. No extra explanation. No attitude. No argument. Just clarity. Now let me take you deeper into how officers think in this moment. They are trained to read behavior under pressure. Nervousness alone doesn't mean guilt, but unusual behavior patterns can raise flags. Rapid movements. Avoiding eye contact in an extreme way. Over-explaining. Contradictions. These things stand out. But here's something even more important. When someone clearly knows their rights and communicates them calmly, it often signals confidence and awareness. That doesn't end the stop, but it changes how it unfolds. Now, I want to warn you about something most people don't expect. Even after you refuse consent, the officer may still search your vehicle if they believe they have legal justification. This could be probable cause. This could be something they claim to observe. And this is where people get confused. They think saying that sentence guarantees protection. It doesn't guarantee anything in the moment. What it does is protect you later. Because if a search happens without your consent, the legality of that search can be challenged. But if you said yes, even casually, that option becomes much harder. Now let's talk about another common mistake. People try to negotiate. Well, I guess you can check the trunk, but not the front. That's a dangerous move, because partial consent is still consent, and it often creates more complications than it solves. It's either a clear yes or a clear no, nothing in between. And remember, hesitation can sometimes be interpreted as uncertainty, which can invite more pressure. That's why clarity matters. Now imagine a slightly different scenario. You've refused the search. The officer pauses, walks back to the patrol car. This is the moment where most drivers start overthinking. Did I make things worse? What are they doing now? Here's what's actually happening. They're checking your information, running your license, looking for any flags, possibly calling in details. They may also be deciding their next step based on everything they've observed so far. And this is where your earlier behavior plays a huge role, because the stop is not just about that one sentence. It's about the entire interaction. Your tone, your movements, your consistency, everything builds a picture. Now here's something that might surprise you. Many experienced officers can tell within seconds whether a situation is routine or worth digging into further. And that judgment is not based on one thing. It's a combination of subtle signals. That's why people who stay calm, consistent, and clear often avoid unnecessary escalation. Not always, but often. And that's the goal. Not to win the interaction, not to outsmart anyone, but to avoid turning a simple stop into something bigger. Now let me ask you something again, and this time think about it carefully. If you were pulled over right now, would you stay calm enough to say that one sentence clearly and confidently? Because knowing it is one thing. Using it in the moment is something else entirely. And that's where preparation matters. Not fear, not paranoia, just awareness. Because traffic stops don't become complicated because of the lights. They become complicated because of what happens in the conversation that follows. And sometimes, all it takes is one sentence, said the right way, at the right moment, to keep things from going in a direction you never intended. Think about that the next time you're behind the wheel.